waking myself up by punching the wall that was next to my bed with my bad hand. So you can imagine I woke up in excruciating pain. I was not going to forget that dream. and towards the end of that day, I was spending some time with the Lord in prayer, and the dream came back to me, and I was getting ready to laugh. And the Spirit of God said, "Don't laugh. That's the dream you asked for." And then the Lord began to open up the understanding of the dream. The dream was of a busy city street. It was like a street in Manhattan, but it was double, triple wide. And the cars were just moving at a rapid pace down the street. And there was a crosswalk going across the street, but it was just covered with dirt.
Wow.
And there was a soap bucket with a scrub brush sitting at one end of the crosswalk. So I went over to the soap bucket, grabbed the scrub brush, and I started cleaning the crosswalk. And I would stay in an area until it got clean and white. And then I would progressively move until I get to the end of the crosswalk. And as I'm at the end of the crosswalk, there are two persons, they're standing up over me. I can't see their faces, but they're in black and they're talking to me and they're saying, "Man, you're cleaning a crosswalk?" And I just looked up at them and I said, "Well, somebody's got to do it." And then I go back to cleaning. And it was this motion that I'm doing in the dream, scrubbing, that has me to punch the wall next to my bed. It wakes me up. But if you're familiar with the dream that God gave to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, we can see in the Bible how God meets individuals exactly where they are in life. Nebuchadnezzar was an idolater. So he uses an idol, an image, if you will, to open up to him the understanding of the rise and fall, world government powers, and ultimately the introduction of the eternal kingdom of Jesus Christ himself. Well, the Lord knew that I loved the street life. He knew I loved the fast life, and that was what that street was. He said, "Chris, this street, it's like this life. It's dangerous. It's moving at a rapid pace." He said, "But there are people that want to get through this world. Want to get through this life and get through this life safely. But how can they get through it safely if they can't see the way? The way is the crosswalk." And he said, "Make it plain." And I said, "Make it plain, prepare the way." And I'm like, that's the message of John the Baptist. I said, that's the message of the Forerunner.
You might have seen him in circles on YouTube. He's been doing YouTube a very long time. Been preaching, been walking with God for a very long time. This man shifted a paradigm in my life, to be completely honest with you. So this episode is very special to me, seeing that he's definitely, he doesn't even know yet, he's definitely a part of my childhood and upbringing and the way I thought and walk with God and my worldview. So again, with that being said, I would like to welcome the Forerunner. Forerunner, how you doing?
Curtis, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, brother. And I'm honestly humbled. God be the glory.
All right, thank you so much. So I mean, with that being said, I want to start with, we seen you. I mean, I went back and looked at your page, man. You have videos on there that are almost 20 years old. So you were one of the pioneers on YouTube. First, what made you even start preaching and putting your thoughts and teachings on YouTube?
That's a good question. So I started YouTube homeless. All right. There were some things that transpired in my life. I knew the Lord had called me out to doing full-time ministry, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like. And through a series of events that transpired in my life, I ended up being homeless. And the only thing that I had that was of any value in my possession at that time was a laptop computer. And so I was looking at this laptop and I'm like, "Lord, what am I supposed to do? This is all that I have to my name." And I started just looking on the laptop to see what software I had on there. And you tell how old it was because I had Windows Movie Maker. And I'm like, okay, this is the only thing that I have here. And I was impressed to make a DVD. And but I didn't have any money to buy a video camera. That very day, when I lost my housing situation, there was a sister from a church that I had visited the previous Saturday. And she called me and she asked if I knew how to do flooring, like laying wood floors, carpet, that type of thing. And interestingly enough, I knew a little bit about it because I had an uncle that taught me some things. I said, yeah, I know how to do a little flooring. And she began to tell me about a brother that was a member at her church that did flooring jobs. But unfortunately, there was one job that he was working on in Atlanta at that time, a commercial job at a medical facility. And the workers that were supposed to be assisting him with it, they ducked out on her. So he needed some help. And I said I'd be able to come through. So I knew that there'd be some money coming in as a result of me getting that job that day. So I went to Walmart to look to see what camera that I might potentially be able to purchase with the monies that I was projecting that I was going to get from that job. And it was going to be enough to get like the camera that I wanted, but it would certainly be enough to get a camera. And as I was looking, there was a sales attendant behind the counter and said, we had the sale on the cameras just yesterday. I think we have one left. And she went under the counter. She pulled out this camera. It was better than the one that I was looking at. And it was cheaper than the one that I was looking at. So I was like, Lord, okay. And so worked the job, got the money, went back, purchased the camera. And then I started working on making this DVD. And I made the DVD, continued to work with this gentleman, still didn't have a housing situation. So I was living out of a Honda Accord. And as I was getting money from that job situation, I would take the money, I'd buy blank DVDs to start printing up the videos that I was making.
Yeah.
Start passing them out for it. Until there was a brother that said to me, hey, you know what? You should put this on YouTube. And I knew about YouTube, but I never thought about putting it on YouTube because YouTube was definitely in its infancy at that time. And so I went to a nearby like apartment complex, sat in the parking lot, and I hijacked somebody's internet that didn't have any security on it. And I uploaded those videos off the DVD to YouTube. So you can imagine how long that took. Uploaded them there, didn't think anything else about it. Maybe about 2 months later, I received a message from somebody that was watching the videos on YouTube, and they asked a question. This was when I first went back into YouTube again from the time that I downloaded the videos. And now I'm seeing that there were views on the videos, like tens of thousands of views. I was shocked. And I'm saying, wow, people are watching the videos. So I looked at the question that the person posed to me. Said I can answer this question from the scriptures prayerfully. And so I went to do that. And most of the videos that I released during that time were responses to questions that were coming in from viewers. And matter of fact, that video was Illuminati 666 call 911. And I put that out. And after I put out one or two of those videos, I just had that impression strong from the Lord. This is what I want you to do. I want you to be proclaiming my message via the internet, get the message out. And the Lord impressed me. He said, there's going to be people in the world that support the ministry so that it can go forward. And that was the truth of the matter too, because the first person, this is crazy, that the first person that actually gave some real financial assistance to the ministry was a heroin dealer in Greece. No lie. The guy contacted me and he was asking me some Bible questions. And for some reason, I don't remember exactly why, but I didn't get back to him immediately. And then all of a sudden, he sent me a message and said, listen, I'll give you £1,000 if you just answer these questions. And it was the same day that the Lord said, you need to respond to this guy. So I saw this and I said, oh, now he's going to think that I'm going to answer Bible questions from him. So I sent him a message and I said, listen, I don't want your money. Don't send me any money. but here's what the Bible has to say about the questions that you asked. And then he contacted me back. He said, thank you. He said, Forerunner, you're a man of your word. I'm a man of my word too. I'm going to send you £1,000. And he sent money to help support the ministry, and he got out of the drug game. So it was a blessing. God was good. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So take us back a little bit. Like,
Sure.
to even become this person to start the ministry to get on YouTube.
Mhm.
Like your story. Take us to who is Chris Hudson to even to who are you now and back then to where you can even start and your learning process and your journey.
Okay. So grew up in New York. Born in Brooklyn, grew up primarily in Long Island, New York. Two-parent household. My father migrated from Jamaica here to the U.S. My mother is a native of Macon, Georgia. And I grew up in a household with two siblings, an older brother, older sisters. And my father was, both my father and my mother, let me say that, they were very religious individuals, even though they had their struggles, as we all do as human beings. They had a desire that my brother, my sister, myself would love the Lord. And so teaching us the Bible was a very integral part of our household. And then they tried to make sure that we went to good schools. So I never went to public school until I was in my last year in school. They just put us through private schools, like Catholic school, Lutheran school, whatever was supposed to be the best private school. They tried to put us in those schools, which was interesting nonetheless, but they were trying to secure a good education for us. That was the objective. And throughout that process, how can I say this? Throughout that process, there were a lot of things that happened in our household. Like I said, my parents were religious, but there were conflicts in their life as well. My mother got sick, started dying from cancer when I was 13 years old. She died before I reached my 16th birthday. And during that same time, my father came under investigation by the FBI because of some business dealings that he was engaged in that were not above board. I'll just leave it right there.
Yeah.
And so my mother's dying from cancer. My father's being indicted by the FBI. I'm growing up in that situation. My brother and my sister go off to college. I have a greater deal of flexibility that I never had before. And I find myself getting involved in things that I should have never got involved in, whether it was illegal activities, selling drugs, scamming, all types of different things. I found myself just getting involved in credit card fraud, stealing. It's, whatever the street was providing, I was taking. And during that time of my life as well, I just really developed a love for hip hop music. I was deeply in love. Oh yeah, deeply in love with rap music. My father hated it because what guy you going? I'm sorry. From the time I was 12, it was definitely 13. My father hated it. Every time he went to parent teacher conferences at school, the teachers would always tell him, Chris is the best rapper in school. And he hated that. So that was like my first real love. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a rapper. That was what I was fixated on for a great deal of my early life, which actually even led me to dropping out of college at 19. And I just went full-fledged to trying to get into the entertainment industry. I was working on rapping. I was managing some girls that were really good singers. I was writing music for them. And my music writing caught the attention of some guys that were actually friends of myself from when I was younger, but they were active in the industry because they had some connections that gave them a foot in the door to start working on the side of production. They were doing cinema and working on music videos and things of that nature. And so they brought me on with them, and I started writing treatments for the music videos. So we would get the music from whatever artists they were working with. And my responsibility was basically to curate a video that complemented the music that was being produced by that artist. You get the concept. And I worked on several projects like that with some people that are, known in the industry. And then I got the opportunity to write my first, well, I'll tell you how it happened. I got called into my manager's office and the guy said to me, Chris, you've been doing great on the projects we've been getting for you. What would you think about writing a script for a movie? And I was excited because at that time, just turning 20, I'm like, of course, this is a no-brainer. This is going to be the opportunity of a lifetime for me. This is going to be the big one that now propels me to the position where I really now going to make some big money. So I said, 100%. When do I have to bring the script in? As they kind of pitched to me the concept. And they said, you have to bring it in tomorrow night by 8:00. And I said, what? That doesn't make any sense. So they started telling me how they were going to be executive producing projects with a particular company, well, particular artist, actually with Madonna. And there was going to be some movies that they were going to be working on. Currently, they didn't have any known writers. So if I just wrote something that was ripping and that people liked, I would probably get the opportunity to really work. So go home, write, bring it back to us tomorrow night before 8:00. So I left the office and I went to the supermarket. I bought a can of coffee, which I don't really encourage that, but nonetheless, bought a can of coffee, went back home, and I started writing. And as I was writing, I got tired, opened up that can of coffee, and I took about 2-3 handfuls of coffee, and I just ate it. I didn't even, drink anything. Just handfuls of coffee, crazy. And you can imagine after a few minutes, my eyes were like as big as fish bowls, and I'm there writing. And the next day before 8:00, I went into the manager's office and I dropped on his desk a 200+ page script. And he looks at this thing, he picks it up, and he says, what's this? I said, this is a script you asked me for. He says, is it any good? I said, I have no idea. And I left. About a week or so passed. They called me up and said, Chris, the script is good. And they started passing it around. And it ended up being a feature film that was released by New Line Cinema. And I was picked as the story writer for that project. So it was the first motion picture that I had go out to the theaters. And I was in the Writers Guild of America at 20 years old. So yeah, that was my big into the industry, and I started getting a lot of different opportunities to work on pilots and other movie projects. And all the while, my greatest love was rapping. Matter of fact, my manager for my music manager was DJ Clue's sister. If you know who DJ Clue is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when DJ Clue was DJ Clue, like you're on Hulu, you hit. In fact, it was right at the time when Clue signed with Rockefeller Records.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of get the bearings on that if you know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, she's a Christian now too, praise the Lord.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. So, but the thing that I think I should make mention of is that during this time that I was working on the music, working on the movies, I was in a relationship with a young lady, Haitian young lady. And if you know anything about Haitian culture, voodoo is is a very integral part of, I shouldn't say integral. It's heavily practiced within Haitian culture. I think that's the fair way to state it. And it was certainly true in her household. Her father was a practitioner of voodoo. He had those implements around the home. Matter of fact, like her younger brothers, it was common occurrence for them to come upstairs crying because they said spirits were messing with them while they were sleeping. It was a common occurrence. And I spent a lot of my time at that home, smoking lots of weed. And that's where I worked on a lot of my projects, where a lot of the ideas were conceived. So I'm just trying to give some insight into the type of influence that was behind my quote unquote creative process. And it was while all this was going on, there was a day that I was at home and I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror. And when I looked in the mirror, I looked into my eyes and I could see that there was something there with me that was not me. And I smiled because I wasn't oblivious to the supernatural, as I made mention of earlier, my upbringing, but I wasn't fearful of it. I actually thought that it was a good thing. And the reason I thought it was a good thing was because in that moment in time, I considered that this being, this spirit that was with me, it's what was giving me the ability and helping me to be so productive in the industry the way that I was, writing these scripts in 30 days time, was working on pilots in under a week. You know, these guys were giving me projects and my deadlines were not even reasonable. But because they saw me turning that first script in under 24 hours, they thought this guy's got a special talent, a special gift. But in reality, the motivation was really coming from the spirit that was working within. And that's the reason why I'm so behemoth when I deal with the subject matter of the entertainment industry and trying to really open up the eyes of people to realize that there is a spirit behind this. This is not just, yes, it is true that people do have talents, gifts, and abilities because the Lord places these things in individuals to be used for his honor and glory. But if these talents and gifts and abilities that God has placed within human beings are not surrendered to him so that they can be consecrated to his service, the devil himself will utilize these individuals as his agents to accomplish his purpose in this world. Because we can only follow one master or the other. We're always rather under the influence of one spirit or the other. None of us function in this world as neutral. Um, I know you have a lot of topics you probably want to get to, but that's pretty much the formation of my early childhood, my early manhood. And it was during all of this that even though I was going in a direction that initially seemed as though I was going to accomplish all that I had in my heart to do, like achieve my dreams, I started feeling this sense of dissatisfaction. Like there was a void and it wasn't being filled by the potential, well, the success that I was experiencing and the potential for success that was before me. I wasn't satisfied. And I never relayed that to my close friends because I knew that rather they would have thought that I was crazy. But it was something that was stripping every measured piece from my soul. So I started smoking a lot more weed than I was smoking previously because now I was smoking the weed, trying to self-medicate and and keep myself in a state of peace and not not stressed out thinking about my 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 future.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so from there, how does the Forerunner come about? Like, you obviously you're having a lot of success,
Mhm.
but you're not satisfied, and you notice a spirit on you. How do we transition there to really diving in with God and becoming a forerunner and coming into this knowledge?
Sure. So there was a day that I picked up some money from a guy that was selling some drugs for me. So, unfortunately, music industry and drug culture and hand in hand, especially with the time that I was working, using those things to finance some of the projects that we were doing on the side. And when I picked up this money from that guy, I went to Washington Heights, Dykeman, to pick up some more weight
Mhm.
from my on my connect. And after I picked up those drugs, I did something that was really stupid. I went to a nearby park, a really popular park in New York. It's called Dykeman Park,
Yeah.
but it was nighttime. And I went into that park with all these drugs on me, and I went to roll up a blunt to smoke some weed because my conscience was, well, I shouldn't say my conscience, my mind was just bothering me. I didn't realize that it's my conscience troubling me. You understand what I'm saying? I wasn't spiritually minded at that time, but the spirit of God was troubling my conscience.
Hmm.
And so there I was, getting ready to smoke. And as I lit up, all of a sudden, I just started hearing this voice within my conscious saying, Chris, you need to stop selling drugs.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I need to stop selling drugs. I was like, Chris, you need to stop smoking weed. And I took the blunt, I put it out on the ground, put it down on the ground, rubbed it out with my foot. I said, you know what? I'm not smoking weed anymore. I said, Chris, you need to stop doing the movies. I was like, you know what? I'm done doing the movies anymore. Chris, you need to stop rapping. I said, you know what? I'm not going to rap anymore. Chris, you need to go to school and become a preacher. I said, I'm going to go to school and become a preacher.
Like all right there, like everything. So there's, and you just yes.
100%. That's why I always call that my Damascus Road experience. I was going 100 miles per hour in one direction, and the Lord just came and spoke with me. And the thing was, I didn't know it was God. I didn't know it was the Holy Spirit per se,
Mm-hmm.
but I had this strong conviction that if I just listened to these promptings, that I was going to get the peace that I was seeking for. And sure enough, when I yielded, I got the peace right there as I was in Dykeman Park. And I went to my father's house immediately after I left from the park. I said, Dad, I'm going to school. I'm going to become a preacher. My father almost had a heart attack. He just lost it because everybody knew I was living. But here's the interesting thing. He was praying and he had the members in the church praying for me. That's why I always like to encourage parents, no matter how far gone you might think your children may be, continue to pray for them because those prayers are affection. And I know that the prayers of my father and the brothers and sisters at his church were effectual in my behalf, on my behalf rather, because it certainly led to me being troubled and disturbed and God being able to lead me out of that darkness. And so as I was at my father's house and I'm telling him about what happened with me earlier that day, I got a call from my friend and he was asking me about what we were going to do later that evening. And I said, man, listen, I'm done with it. I'm done with the drugs. I'm done with the industry. I'm getting ready to go to school and become a preacher. He said, what? We were in the studio together last night. We were smoking weed together last night. He said, man, I'm coming over. You're going to tell me what happened. And to make a long story short, as a result of my surrender that was made that day, all of my friends that were in my inner circle, they were all baptized into Jesus. And it's because they knew the life that I was living and they knew the path that I was on. They knew the opportunities that were before me and they knew how serious I was about it. And because they saw me now going in this direction, full speed ahead, they were like, there's no way that Chris would leave that if this is not true. So it was, and that's basically the beginning of the Lord leading me to living the life that I'm living now.
Okay, so when you with the when you start all right down the road,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
Because all right, preaching and you preach, but you obviously have a very unique ministry, right? How do you not just go from a regular uh pastor or preacher to exactly what you praying? And how is God telling you this is what he wants you, the message that he wants you to have, right? Because I mean, it's a bold message.
Mm. That's a good question. Well, there's there's two things that I'll tell you about that. One, for the sake of time, I had an injury
Mm-hmm.
that I received to my right arm, and it was a mortal injury. I almost lost my life and almost lost complete use of my right hand. Even to this day, I have partial feeling in my last two fingers. So my pinky finger and I forget whatever finger this one is. I have partial feeling in those two fingers because of the nerve damage that I experienced because of that injury. I went to the doctor for one of my checkups, monthly checkups, and it was a clinic actually. And on this day, the doctors that I would traditionally see when I went to the clinic, they weren't there. There was some other new doctor there. And he began to ask me some questions about my situation. He was looking at my paperwork, and he realized that I still had this cast and all of this on my arm, and it should have been taken off a long time before.
Mhm.
So he immediately takes all the dressings off of my arm. There's a wound on my arm that had not completely healed. It should have been healed before. So he takes in, I forget what chemical it is, but it's, I want to say lidocaine,
Yeah.
but it's something that basically pretty much kind of melts your skin so that the wound will heal up. And then he begins to say to me, listen, I'm going to set you up with physical therapy to begin next week, but you need to go home today and start your own physical therapy on your hand, because if you don't, you're not going to have any use of your right hand.
Wow.
And I went home and I started trying to pull out my fingers because they were like in this. But matter of fact, my hand was just like this, kind of like the position where the Pope's blessing, how the Pope does when he blesses people. They actually named that injury after one of the popes. That's how crazy it is. But anyway, as I'm pulling out my fingers and I can hear scar tissue breaking, well, I could feel it breaking. I broke down and I was crying, and I was there and I was pleading with the Lord, and I'm saying, Lord, I don't know what to do with my life. I came out of the industry, that I focused all my attention in that direction. I didn't finish my schooling, so I don't have all of these different I don't have all of these different tools that I need to really succeed in society and do much of anything special with my life. I need to know what you want me to do. What is it that you want me to do, Lord? I don't ask for dreams. I don't ask for visions. I don't even know if I really believe in those things. But please give me a dream, give me a vision, give me something. And the Lord gave me a dream. I didn't realize it was a dream from the Lord initially, but the Lord definitely gave me a dream. And the dream that he gave me was so vivid that I found myself waking myself up by punching the wall that was next to my bed with my bad hand. So you can imagine I woke up in excruciating pain. I was not going to forget that dream. And after the pain subsided, I started laughing because I said, man, the dream's so real. I mean, they're punching walls. And so throughout that day, it would just keep on coming back to me, the dream. And I would start laughing because the only thing I could think about is the fact that I hit the wall of my neck. And towards the end of that day, I was spending some time with the Lord in prayer, and the dream came back to me. And I was getting ready to laugh. And the Spirit of God said, don't laugh. That's the dream you asked for. And then the Lord began to open up the understanding of the dream to me. The dream was of a busy city street. It was like a street in Manhattan, but it was double, triple wide. And the cars were just moving at a rapid pace down the street. And there was a crosswalk going across the street, but it was just covered with dirt.
Wow.
And there was a soap bucket with a scrub brush sitting at one end of the crosswalk. So I went over to the soap bucket, grabbed the scrub brush, and I started cleaning the crosswalk. And I would stay in the area until it got clean and white. And then I would progressively move until I get to the end of the crosswalk. And as I'm at the end of the crosswalk, there are two persons, they're standing up over me. I can't see their faces, but they're in black and they're talking to me and they're saying, man, you're cleaning a crosswalk? And I just looked up at them and I said, well, somebody's got to do it. And then I go back to clean. And it was this motion that I'm doing in the dream, scrubbing, that has me punch the wall next to my bed and wakes me up. But if you're familiar with the dream that God gave to Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, we can see in the Bible how God meets individuals exactly where they are in life. Nebuchadnezzar was an idolater. So he uses an idol, an image, if you will, to open up to him the understanding of the rise and fall world government powers, and ultimately the introduction of the eternal kingdom of Jesus Christ himself. Well, the Lord knew that I loved the street life. He knew I loved the fast life, and that was what that street was. He said, Chris, this street, it's like this life. It's dangerous. It's moving at a rapid pace. He said, but there are people that want to get through this world. Excuse me, yeah, want to get through this life and get through this life safely. But how can they get through it safely if they can't see the way? The way is the crosswalk. And he said, make it plain. And I said, make it plain, prepare the way. And I'm like, that's the message of John the Baptist. I said, that's the message of the Forerunner. And so that's where Forerunner came from, the dream.
I think it's so important for, believers, but especially like Christian and young Christian man to find their purpose instead of just, or at least begin to look instead of just kind of going through life and just, in pleasure or just working strictly for money or, so I don't know. I think we just all go through that and we feel it so much, especially as man, because of our purpose and our call from God. So eh, that was so good. I do want to ask you one more. Just
No, go ahead.
man, okay. So yeah, like your road to Damascus moment.
Sure.
In that time, was there any? Since you, I mean, you grew up religious, but obviously you didn't have a super strong relationship with God or with the Spirit.
Yeah.
There was no, and maybe this is why God chose you for this. There was no pushback, no Moses moment where you question. Um,
Hmm.
is it just like, hey, yeah,
Now you got it. So in that point in time, at that point in time, I should say it that way. No, I fully embraced it because as I stated, my mind, I was so distressed. I did something that night that I very well knew if I was in my right mind, I would have went to prison. I would have went to prison.
yeah,
If I got caught with the amount of drugs that I had on me in that part,
Mhm.
we'd be doing this interview
yeah,
with jail phone. Yeah. So,
yeah,
but so the voice of God speaking to me on that night, it ministered to my soul and brought to me everything that I was looking for. And the conviction was there and it was there strong. But and I think it's important that you ask that question. I believe it's the Spirit of God that led you to ask that question because, many of the testimonies that you hear, I like, the Lord came to me and woke me up and I've been walking with the Lord ever since.
yeah,
And, you know what I'm talking about. And praise the Lord for those testimonies, by the way, because I don't want to, I'm not speaking down on them, but you do understand what I'm saying.
Mhm.
That wasn't my situation. I accepted the Lord that day, and for months, I walked very firmly with the Lord. I was preaching everywhere. When I say preaching, I just shared that the Lord is real. Like the one or two Bible verses that I really knew by heart, I was pounding those to everybody that I knew.
yeah,
And then I actually did go away to study theology, which lasted for, my study of theology probably didn't even last for a whole semester. Right. Because it's sad, but I think it's important that I relayed this to everybody that's listening and watching. And it's not coincidental that you asked that question because it would lead me to tell you this. There was a day that I came out of the theology complex. I was coming from a class called Intro to Ministry. And as I came out of the theology complex, I walked out onto this lawn that was in front of the complex. And I just paused there for a minute because I was looking at other students coming from different buildings and everybody had their book bags on, etc. College life. And here the enemy is now speaking to me in my ear. Look at all of them. By the way, I think it's important for me to go back and say, I was not impressed by what I just heard when I was in Intro to Ministry class. All right. There were some things that were being spoken by the professor that were not encouraging to me. And so now I'm starting to question if I'm even in the right place. Okay. So now with this mindset, I find myself standing on that lawn in front of the theology complex, looking at all the other students there. And this enemy is saying, look at all of them. They have their book bags and their books and their pens, and they're all studying to learn how to make money. You just left money. And I'm thinking, this is true. They're trying to learn how to make money, and I left money. I went to my dorm, and in my suite, because then, in the dorm we have suites, and then there's like 4 other dorm rooms that are in that suite. One of my suite mates had the latest, now this even dates things right now. He had the latest, he had the Source magazine.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
And I was like, let me see that. So I grabbed it from him and I'm thumbing through it, right? And I don't even know if I was a whole 10 pages in, but I saw an advertisement for a movie that I wrote the story to called Turn It Up. It was with Ja Rule and what's his name again? Praz from the group The Fugees with Lauryn Hill, Wyclef. Again, so I wrote the story for this movie called Turn It Up. That Ja Rule and him in it. Well, I wrote the initial story. That's a whole other story, but and so I'm looking at this advertisement in there, and it's talking about how it's going to be released in theaters soon. And I'm saying, I'm here talking about I'm going to be a preacher. And my movie's getting ready to be released in the theater. I should be at the premiere for the movie.
Yeah.
The devil, he got me. He got me. And I was like, man, I'm bugging. I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that I was going through this summer. I'm crazy. And I went back to start writing and everything. But I'll tell you something that was interesting. When I went to start writing again, nothing would come out. Like, it wasn't writer's block. Writer's block is you're trying to get that. It's like I couldn't put a period on the page,
Yeah.
And I knew what it was. I said, you know what? I know what this is. All I have to do is I have to reject Christ and it will come back to me. Because I had been looking into many of the things that I've shared in the videos that I put out on the internet. And so I had a couple of $1,000s. I said, listen, I'm going to go get some chat from my old producer. I'm going to get some weed. I'm going to get some new jewelry. I said, I'm going to get some new tattoos. I was like, it's all going to come back. The first thing I did, I went to the jeweler and I saw some rosary beads. Right? Like I saw these, well, there were 2 chains, but one of them was like a white gold rosary beads, like big beads. And like I want those. And my thought was, because as I made mention of, I've been studying, at that point I had studied some things in the Bible and Bible prophecy, and I came to understand the role that this system known as the Roman Catholic Church actually plays in relationship to Bible prophecy and the antichrist nature of that system. And as I told you earlier, when I was in elementary school and my early education was mostly in private schools, one of which being the Catholic Church. And so I said, listen, they use the rosary for their prayers. So I want to get these rosary beads because that's antichrist.
Yeah.
And I told the jewelers, turn the cross upside down. And the jeweler like, what? I said, turn the cross upside down. He said, why would you want to do that? I said, because I'm paying for it. But once again, I'm asking him to turn the cross upside down because I knew what that was all about.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew the occult meaning behind the upside down cross, not dealing with the crucifixion of Peter, but rather the rejection of Jesus. And bought the chains, got the weed, got the tracks. Everything that I made mention of earlier, I followed that whole pattern. And I went back to my small apartment because I left school at this point now. I'm letting you know, I left. like on the drop of the dime.
Mm-hmm.
I was paying for it, so I knew this wasn't what I was going to do any longer. So I took the music that I had. I had a CD that I got from my producer, and I turned the lights off in the room that I was in, and I put the CD in my stereo system. So the only light that was really emitting in the room was this red light coming from the stereo system. And so I lit up. I rolled up a blunt. I lit up, and I started smoking. And I just sat in front of the mirror, and I started to smoke. And I'm looking at my eyes the whole time as I'm smoking, because I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the spirit to come back.
Mm.
And after a space of time, as the music is just playing over and over, and I'm there smoking, sure enough, that spirit came back. And this is a testimony that I've shared all throughout the years as I go from continent to continent, especially dealing with young people, to really try to highlight the fact that there is a spirit behind this entertainment. And something that I think is important for me to share this. I'm trying to remember the name of this actor. His name is Terrence Howard. I saw somebody shared an interview with me that he did, and I think it was last year. And they said, I wanted you to see this interview because when I saw this interview, I thought of you and your testimony immediately. And in his interview, he begins to talk about how the best actors, they're not just acting, but they're inhabited by the spirits, something of that nature.
Mm.
And he says, well, this is what you need to do. He says, the process that I go through is that I'll go in the bathroom and I'll go and I'll look in the mirror.
Wow.
That
Mm-hmm.
goes on to talk about looking in the mirror, looking in his eyes, staying there, waiting for the spirit to come and inhabit him with the lights off.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it would come and inhabit him. And then he knows he's ready to go out and act out whatever scene he has to do. And he's really not acting. He's just being moved by that spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know this man. I've never met him before. I just know of him. So it cannot be coincidental that he is regurgitating the exact same thing
Mm.
that I have relayed as my experience. It's not coincidental. Yes.
Ooh, okay. So it's not, man, it's for you, you know, your mission and your ministry. It's a deep knowing of these things. It's not just book knowledge. It's not just something somebody told you. It's a knowing of these things. And I mean, that I ain't gonna, that's deep. So, okay. Speaking of that, so I talked about earlier, one of the things that really shaped my life was the Jay-Z deception. I mean, you just spoke, it brings a whole new color to this video now. You just spoke about, you know, you being with Clue with Rockefeller,
100%.
you know, a few, you know, years later, you release the Jay-Z deception. And I mean, it's one of your more popular videos. How can you tell us a little bit about how that came about? And can you just tell us about it for the people who may have not seen it or know about it?
Okay. So I'll tell what it is about first. So the Jay-Z deception is a documentary, and it deals with Jay-Z. It deals with his music, not just him and his music as well, but it does use him as a springboard to actually deal with the occult practices within the music industry and incorporation of Freemasonry and occult symbolism within the music videos, and just really using the video that I believe it was Run This Town to help illustrate how this stuff is deeply entwined in the symbolism that's being promoted through these music videos and being and being ingested by us as entertainment. Yeah, so I guess that's the quick summary of it. I never had any plan on doing that documentary. I had no plans of doing any types of videos to really expose the occult and the music industry. If you look at all of my older videos, you'll notice that and I think I'm 100% correct on this, that the Jay-Z deception is the very first one that specifically deals with the occult in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Because initially in the beginning, I had no plans on dealing with that. I just knew what my experience was. I would share things about my testimony.
Mm.
But because I still had ties in the entertainment industry, still to this day with some people, I didn't want individuals thinking that I was matter of fact, I didn't even want people to think that I was putting out information like this because I just had some type of bias. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in the plans. But I woke up one morning and reading my Bible, and I was making plans to work on some things that day. And I was just impressed by the Spirit of the Lord. God was like, okay, you're making plans about what you're going to work on today, but why don't you ask me what I want you to work on today? And I was like, you know what, Lord, forgive me, right? And so what is it that you want me to work? And the Lord led me. He said, go look at the comments or the questions that some people have submitted to you. And there was a question that was submitted to me about that video, Run This Town, which was Jay-Z, Kanye, and Rihanna. I wasn't even familiar with the video. And so I pulled it up, kind of look into what this person was just asking, because they were asking if there's anything relevant in that video to what I've been talking about with Freemasonry and things of that nature, because I was talking about Freemasonry, but not in the context of the music industry and the entertainment industry per se. And as soon as I turned the video on, it was like, I can't explain it better than just saying it was like the veil was pulled back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching the video, but all I'm seeing is the occult. You know, I'm seeing the symbolism, I'm just seeing everything. And God was like, expose it.
Mm-hmm.
And that day I immediately started working and I started writing. And as I would write, maybe a page or two or something of that nature, because on the documentary, I immediately turned on the camera and I recorded. And after I finished recording, I went to write again. I got a page or two, turned on the camera, I recorded. I put together the Jay-Z deception within 48 hours, just writing and reporting continuously. I only stopped to eat, and I think it maybe took, a nap or two, but that was it. And that's how that one came out. That was totally inspired by God. And that's probably the most popular video that I've ever put out, because even though the numbers on YouTube don't even really reflect it, because it might show 1 million views or something like that, but the Jay-Z deception was being bootlegged. It was being sold in the hood. Like the bootleggers had the Jay-Z deception was being sold in barbershops and all of that.
Yeah.
And I was asked to come on radio shows, like secular, regular, popular morning shows, to come and talk about this, because it was dealing with Jay-Z and presenting information that people could not deny. It was right there before their eyes. And it was so much so that Jay-Z was called up to Hot 97 and they started questioning him on his connection with the occult and Freemasonry. And that was all prompted by the Jay-Z deception documentary that the Lord let me put out. So that was all the Lord. I take absolutely no credit for that whatsoever. I'm just blessed that I've had the opportunity to be used by God to help other people see some things that I myself was aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, Forerunner, I want to tell you right now, in the spirit of honesty and the spirit of truth, my dad and me were definitely one of those bootleggers. We
Uh,
we, we definitely had that on
that's hilarious.
we definitely had that on tape, man. It's like at that time, maybe it was just a time. I just remember like my dad and his friends, he told me about it one day, and that's the first thing he showed me. It was like, awakening out of the matrix, what he called it. You coined the term in the video.
Mhm.
And it was just like him and his friends were getting together, and we we weren't on YouTube. We had the tapes. So we were watching it, man. And I mean, first of all, I want to say the Lord I'm not going to say the Lord is just wonderful. Like,
Amen.
you first told me that you had to write a script, in 24 hours. And then he just told me he brought it full circle, but you had this spirit on you. But you brought it full circle to write the Jay-Z Deception under his influence in 48 hours.
Amen.
That just popped out to me like that's crazy.
Amen.
Greater is he who is in us.
Amen.
And I before like the next question too, I want to kind of say like, so what do you say to the people who feel like it's just harmless?
Right.
The entertainment is harmless because a lot of it, I watching your videos and then just doing life, it's just like, oh well, it's just music, whatever I know. But it kind of seems like when your testimony right now seems like we're not even fans of the actual people per se, but like the spirit behind them. So what do you say, to people who just feel like this harmless?
I love what you just said. The Bible says in Ephesians 6 and verse 12 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I think the first thing that I would really desire to highlight in the minds of individuals that are under this deception that these things are harmless is to really bring to the forefront of their minds that we are living in the midst of a spiritual conflict. And I know that that truth eludes us because we're not seeing angels and demons fighting before us. We don't have the ability to see these things that are taking place within behind the veil, but they are taking place continuously. And our souls are being laid into balance. And there is no such thing as a man or a woman that is functioning, as I spoke of earlier, independent of being influenced by one power or the other. And the war is for the mind, because ultimately, the enemy wants our worship. We were created as beings that will honor and glorify the God of heaven. And in us reflecting his character, it's the greatest form of worship that we can give to him. Worship is what this conflict is over ultimately. And the Bible tells us in Proverbs 4 and verse 23, keep the heart, meaning the mind, with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Everything that goes into the seat of our consciousness, everything that goes into our minds impacts our lives. The same way that our literal heart pumps that life-giving blood that's responsible for feeding every tissue, rather every cell, every tissue, every organ. And it's the seed of life, more or less. And if anything impacts our heart, it ultimately impacts our lives. So likewise, whatever goes into our minds, it impacts our thoughts,
Mhm.
it impacts our words, it impacts our action, it impacts our feelings. And our thoughts and our feelings make up our characters. So we're being shaped by the information that is going into our minds. And when we willfully put into our minds information, even if we may know that it's not real, if we willfully subject ourselves to perverse information, it will pervert us as human beings. If we subject ourselves to corrupt information, it will corrupt us as human beings. And we have to realize how delicate and how malleable, moldable the human mind is, and how malleable our characters are. And when we come to realize the fact that we are not as strong as we may deem ourselves to be, and that we're more pliable than most of us consider ourselves to be, when we come to a realization of what we are as human beings, then we'll be a lot more critical about what we allow to pass into the corridors of our minds. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's so I go back and forth with that. Even though I know better, I think it's just, and in full transparency,
I hear you.
just being in this physical world, but being in this physical and spiritual world, it's easy to, if you're not being intentional, to kind of forget that we are having uh a constant spiritual experience, that there are angels and demons and stuff around. It's not just kind of what the world tells you today about. It's just psychology and feelings, and these things are not. We're having a very deeply spiritual experience. Uh, so
100%.
it's that's one of the things that I appreciate about it, because when I tune into your channel and your videos, I quickly snap like, all right, I know what it is, and it helps. It does take me to a deeper, I think, a level of connection with God, because it's like, all right, like the Lord's telling me like, hey, snap into it. But I wanted to, one of the things in the Jay-Z deception that always sticks in my head is you had this scene where it's like, just like these endless drone bodies, and you talk about the occult and their mission to essentially brainwash a generation. I wanted to ask you, do you feel like they have achieved that goal today?
Let me I'm going to answer your question. If you don't mind, I want to go back to something that I just heard you saying earlier, because I really appreciate your transparency and the things that you're talking about, because I think that a lot of people really identify with what you just said. And the whole idea, I want to say concept, the whole idea of the fact that we all have to be intentional about our relationship with God, intentional how we live our life. It's not a coincidence that in the example of Jesus Christ, you see him when he wakes up in the morning. It tells us a great while before his day, he spent time with the Lord, his Father, in prayer.
Mm,
Um, believing that God is important, because without faith, it's impossible to please God.
mhm,
But the Lord isn't just called us to believe in his existence. He calls us into relationship with him, continual unbroken communion with him, like a branch that's connected to a vine. It's that continual unbroken connection with the Lord that sustains us in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. And at any point in time, we think we can exist independent of that really strong connection. That's when we're certainly on the path of destruction. It's like I have a video that I put out, a little short. I'm going to answer your question. I have a little short that I put out, and it's of me taking a leaf off of a tree. And I asked my daughter, is it dead or is it alive? And she says, it's dead. And I said, why is it dead? And then she says, because it's not connected to the source of life, but yet it's still green, you know? And I think and that's the way that a lot of us live our lives. Like I'm still the believer. I'm still talking that Jesus talk. I'm listening to this gospel. And well, maybe not even listening to the gospel music, but we're still talking that talk, and we still look like we're Christian. But are you connected to Christ in that space of time?
mhm.
because even the leaf that's disconnected from the branch will remain green for a space of time.
Mhm.
But if that connection is not there, it will be seen over time that in truth it's not partaking of this person's life. So I'm saying this to say that we have to make a decision as to whether or not we want a relationship with Christ, not just to believe in him or know about him, but have a relationship with him. A relationship that the Bible symbolizes as a communion between a man and a woman bound within the institution of marriage, where the two become one.
Mhm.
That relationship means when I wake up in the morning, just like that, the husband and wife that are in the bed, they see their spouse the first thing in the morning. We need to go see Christ when we open our eyes.
Yeah.
We need to talk to the Lord. Good morning. How are you doing? What do you want me to do today? How should I live my life today? Lord, I was struggling with this yesterday. Help me to gain the victory over those things that I was struggling with yesterday. Just in other words, I'm simply saying having that unbroken communion with the Lord, abiding relationship. Because we do not have that abiding relationship, we are susceptible to the assaults of the enemy in ways that we can't even begin to fathom. And unfortunately, as you were making mention of concerning the Jay-Z deception video,
Mhm.
yeah, the enemy has been extremely successful in brainwashing the masses.
That's going to be it for today's episode of the Male to Man podcast. I really enjoyed this. Is again one of my favorite ones. I'll see you guys soon.
When the Jay-Z deception was put out, it was still a time in which this type of information was foreign to many people. The occult, the satanic agenda, these things were being exposed. And a lot of people woke up. A lot of people began to realize that this isn't just harmless entertainment. This is the very plan of Satan being carried out in society to draw people into perdition. And it was like the enemy said, okay, you see what I'm doing? I'm not going to try to hide it anymore. I'm going to embrace it. It's just harmless entertainment.